So I have my mise en place ready to make the Russian tea cookies. Flour, the pecans. The pecans I ground for you so in case you didn't have a food processor. So this is just exactly what you need for pecans. So all-purpose flour, pecans. I have the salt in with the sugar. It's not very much sugar. And then vanilla, which I'll add shortly, and butter. I wanted to say a word about the butter. I've had the butter out in order for it to soften. It's very important that your butter doesn't get too soft. The butter should not be shiny. If the butter is shiny, it's too warm. Ideally, the butter should be firm, and if I press with a little bit of force, it gives under my finger, but it should not be shiny, and it should not be any softer than that. It's very important. As we mix, heat is generated, and if the butter is too warm, that friction, the heat of friction, will melt it. So it's very important that you don't get it too warm to begin with. I'm going to be using the mixer, the 5-quart mixer, with a paddle. So I'm going to put the butter in the mixing bowl with the sugar and the salt. And I'll mix it on low to begin with, and then I'll raise the speed a little bit. I'm trying to cream this light and fluffy. I will stop a couple of times in order to, if the butter is sticking to the paddle, to take it down. So I'll mix this on low speed until I'm sure that it's not going to come flying out at me. And after that, I'll raise it up and mix it until it's light and fluffy. So I've been mixing it for about a minute. I stopped and scraped it down so that the butter was not stuck on the paddle. It still has a little ways to go. I'm going to slow it down and add the vanilla right now. So I just added the vanilla, and I'll raise up the speed a little bit. I measured the vanilla right into the mixing bowl as opposed to putting it in another container. Vanilla is alcohol based, so if I let it sit, it will evaporate. So I'm going to stop it and scrape it. So I've been mixing it for about 2 minutes since I added the vanilla, and that's on low-medium speed right now. I have a 10-speed mixer, and it's on speed 4 right now. So I don't want to mix it any faster than that. I just want to be a little patient. So I'm just going to show you right now what it looks like. It's still very yellow. I would guess that it needs a little bit more time. It should be just a little bit lighter. So I'm going to continue to mix it, and we'll come back to it in about a minute or so. So it's been mixing about another minute, and it's a little bit lighter in color, a little fluffier, and I think it's ready for the flour and the pecans. And now I'm just going to mix it enough to bring it together. going to stop before it's completely mixed. And then I'm going to scrape it again to try to make sure I get everything up from the bottom. So I've just finished scraping it. I scraped the sides and down to the bottom and scraped off the paddle. And now I'm going to mix it again just a little bit on low speed, the lowest speed I can, just to bring it together. Okay. And I'm done. And now I'm ready to portion. Okay, we're going to start portioning the cookie dough. One thing I wanted to address, because I see in photos and videos of how you're baking that I didn't stress how important it is to have parchment that fits the pan correctly. So I'm going to be scooping onto this half sheet pan. So I'm taking one of those full sheets of parchment. If you cut the parchment in half, it actually doesn't fit a half sheet pan correctly. So I'm going to cut a little bit more off of the parchment. Try to do it here where you can see. And the reason I do that is because then the parchment fits the pan exactly. If you want things to bake correctly, if you want everything to look exactly the same, then you want to make sure that you don't have parchment just jammed into a corner. You want parchment to fit the pan exactly. And because I'm trying to train you as if you were going to be working in a bake shop, we would like to have everything the same size. All the cookies the same size. So professionally, I would use scoops to portion accurately. So I'm guessing you may or may not have scoops at home, so I'll give you an alternative. But all the scoops have a number on them. For example, this scoop you probably won't be able to see in this video, but there's a number right here. In this case, the number is 20. This is a 20 scoop. What that means is there are 20 scoops per quart. It's a volumetric measurement. So there's scoops all the way from a number 6 to a number 100 that I have easily accessible. These cookies are meant to be relatively small. You could scoop them any size you wanted, but normally I use 100 scoop, which means it's a very small scoop and it's 100 scoops per quart. I'm going to make them slightly larger today. I'm using a 70 scoop, which is 70 scoops per quart. Regardless of, I'm going to turn it this way so I can get a little bit more into the video. Regardless of the scoop that I'm using, I need to make sure that every cookie is the same size. So I'm not going to scoop like this and make it about that size. I'm actually going to press into the scoop and make it exactly the size that I want. When you're working in a professional bake shop, it's important that everything's the same size every time. For your home scooping, I'm assuming you don't have a scoop, I think we'll get a similar size. If you use your teaspoon, we'll get a similar size for you if you use your teaspoon measure and make it just slightly rounded. Okay? If you do that, that will give you a cookie that's about the same size. Okay? So we're going to portion those. This is a good time to turn on your oven to 325 degrees. We want to bake these very slowly so they bake on the inside as well. This is not a cookie that's like a chocolate chip cookie where we want the inside maybe to be chewy and the outside crispy. This cookie should be done all the way through. So right now is a great time to turn on your oven. Preheat your oven to 325. Okay, I've scooped a little bit, I've probably scooped 3/4 of the dough or 2/3, and my oven is hot and ready to go. So I'm going to bake these, and then once they come out and they're a little bit cool, I'll show you the next portion. So the cookies are out and they have cooled off somewhat, but they're still warm. So they should still feel a little warm in your hand, but you should be able to easily pick up the pan. And then I gave you some icing sugar. The icing sugar should be sifted so it's very, very light and fluffy. I wasn't sure if all of you had sieves, so I actually did that for you. And so you have a little container of icing sugar, confectioner sugar, and I would put it in a larger bowl. These cookies have very little sugar. So if you taste them now, they have very little sweetness. So these are traditionally rolled twice in confectioner sugar. The first time when they're warm, that first layer you will see, we'll come back to it, the first layer will disappear a little bit in the warmth, and all the butter, it will soak up a lot of the powdered sugar. And then when the cookies are completely cool, we'll do another layer. Okay, so go ahead so my cookies are completely cool now, and I'm back. They had their first coating of powdered sugar. I know that some of you don't like a lot of sugar, but these are kind of classic cookies, and they're always rolled in powdered sugar. So these are called Russian tea cookies. You can also find them as Mexican wedding cakes or snowballs or many other names. And the nuts can be changed from, actually the recipe in the textbook uses walnuts. I gave you pecans, you can use almonds, you could use dried fruit, but these are pretty classic. So now we're going to do another coating of powdered sugar. And I'm going to be real careful when I do this one because I'd like to not touch the top. I know that it seems like it's a lot of sugar, but I'm actually shaking off all the extra. And again, I know some of you like things that aren't too sweet. I don't think this cookie is very sweet. It just looks that way because it has powdered sugar on the outside. So there you go. Russian tea cookies. Go ahead and finish the powdered sugar.